It started as an ordinary morning, quiet, slow, and wrapped in the soft comfort of routine. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, warming the floor where Daniel sat tying his shoes. Across the room the house was still. Too still. That's when Max began to bark. Not the playful bark Daniel was used to. This one was sharp, urgent. It echoed through the hallway, cutting through the calm like something unseen had shifted. Daniel looked up, confused. Max? What's wrong? The dog wasn't looking at him. Instead, Max stood rigid near the front door, right beside a pair of old, worn-out shoes. Daniel frowned. Those shoes hadn't been touched in months. They didn't belong to him. Max let out a low whine, pacing back and forth, then stopping, always returning to stand guard over them. His body trembled slightly, ears alert, eyes locked as if the shoes might move. Daniel felt a strange unease settle in his chest. "Hey, it's nothing," he murmured, trying to calm the dog. But Max wouldn't budge. When Daniel stepped closer, Max blocked his path, gently but firmly, placing himself between Daniel and the shoes. That's when Daniel noticed something. The scent. Faint but familiar. His heart skipped. Because those shoes, they couldn't be here. They belonged to someone who was long gone. And Max had never reacted like this before. Daniel swallowed hard, his pulse quickening as the room suddenly felt smaller. Because whatever Max was sensing, it wasn't just about the shoes. Before we continue, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching dog stories. And tell me, where are you watching from? Morning came gently to the house. Not with noise, not with urgency, but with light. A soft golden glow slipped through the curtains, stretching slowly across the wooden floor. Dust floated in the air, turning in the sunlight like tiny drifting stars. Daniel sat at the edge of his bed, quiet and still. He leaned forward, tying the laces of his shoes with practiced ease. The rhythm was familiar, reassuring. Loop, pull, tighten. Another day. Nothing special. Nothing different. From the kitchen, the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly, tires brushing against pavement. Everything felt normal. And yet, there was a stillness in the house that felt just a little too deep. Max noticed it first. He lay near the hallway, his body relaxed, chin resting on his paws. His tail gave a soft, lazy thump against the floor as he watched Daniel move. But then, his ears twitched. Just slightly. A sound. Or maybe something else. Max lifted his head. Slowly. His body didn't move at first. Only his eyes shifted, focusing somewhere beyond the room. Toward the front of the house. Daniel didn't notice. He stood up, brushing his hands together, and let out a small breath. "All right," he murmured to himself. "Let's go." Routine. Coffee. Shoes. Keys. The same order every morning. Max rose to his feet, stretching his front legs forward, back arching slightly. A quiet yawn followed, but it wasn't relaxed. Not completely. His gaze stayed fixed down the hallway. Then, he took a step. Another. Slow. Careful. Each movement measured. Daniel walked past him, heading toward the kitchen. He grabbed a mug, poured coffee, and stared out the window for a moment. The world outside looked unchanged. Still. Peaceful. He took a sip. Behind him, a low sound broke the silence. A soft, uncertain whine. Daniel turned. Max stood near the hallway now. Not moving. Not coming closer. Just watching. "Hey," Daniel said gently. "You okay?" Max didn't respond the way he usually did. No wagging tail. No eager steps forward. Instead, his body stiffened. And then it happened. A sharp bark. Sudden. Loud. Echoing through the house. Daniel flinched. "Max!" Another bark followed. Stronger this time. More urgent. Max moved quickly now, trotting down the hallway toward the front door. His nails clicked softly against the floor. Fast, uneven. Daniel set his mug down. A small crease formed between his brows. "That's weird." He followed. Step by step he moved down the hallway. The light grew dimmer there, the warmth of the morning fading into shadow. Max had already reached the door. He stood there. Rigid. Still. Alert. His ears were raised high. His tail wasn't wagging anymore. It hung still behind him, low but not tucked. Something had his full attention. "Max!" Daniel called softly, slower now. Cautious. The dog didn't turn. Didn't move. Another low sound came from his throat, half whine, half warning. Daniel's chest tightened just a little. He stepped closer. And that's when he saw them. The shoes. Old. Worn. Resting quietly near the door. Just where they had always been left. And yet somehow not. Daniel stopped. His breath caught slightly. "I thought I put those away." The words came out barely above a whisper. Max stepped forward, placing himself directly in front of the shoes, blocking them. His body created a barrier. Not aggressive. Not threatening. But firm. Deliberate. Daniel frowned, confused. "Hey, what is it?" He took another step. Max reacted instantly. Not with a bark this time, but with movement. He shifted sideways, matching Daniel's step, staying between him and the shoes. Guarding. Daniel blinked. A strange feeling began to settle in his chest. Uneasy. Unfamiliar. "Max, it's okay," he said, softer now. "They're just shoes." But even as he said it, something didn't feel right. Max let out another quiet whine. His eyes flicked between Daniel and the shoes, back and forth, as if trying to say something, as if urging him to understand. Daniel hesitated. Then slowly, he crouched down. Careful. Calm. "It's all right," he murmured again. He reached out his hand, not toward Max, but past him, toward the shoes. The air felt different here. Cooler. Stiller. Max's body tensed instantly. A low warning breath left his chest. Not a growl, but close. Daniel paused mid-reach. Okay. He pulled his hand back slightly. Max didn't relax. Not even a little. Instead, he stepped closer to the shoes. Closer than before. Standing over them now. Protecting them. Or protecting Daniel from them. Daniel swallowed. The silence in the hallway felt heavier now. Pressing in. He studied the shoes more carefully. They were old leather. Dark brown, slightly cracked along the sides. The laces were loosely tied, one end dragging lightly against the floor. Nothing unusual. Nothing threatening. And yet, Max refused to let him near them. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel whispered. His voice carried a hint of something new. Not just confusion anymore. Something deeper. Something closer to concern. Max shifted his weight slightly. His paws made a soft sound against the floor. His ears flicked again. And then, he looked directly at Daniel. For the first time since this began, their eyes met. And in that moment, Daniel felt it. A quiet, unspoken message. Something in Max's gaze that wasn't fear. Wasn't panic. But certainty. As if he knew something Daniel didn't. As if he was waiting for Daniel to understand. A faint scent drifted through the air. So subtle it almost wasn't there. Daniel inhaled slowly. Paused. Then again. His brow furrowed. That smell. It was familiar. But distant. Like a memory buried under years of silence. He leaned forward just slightly. Not reaching this time. Just breathing. Trying to place it. Max didn't move. Didn't bark. Didn't stop him. But he stayed close. Ready. Watching. Always watching. Daniel's heartbeat began to pick up. Slow at first. Then stronger. Because the more he focused, the clearer it became. That scent wasn't random. It wasn't new. It belonged to something. Someone. From long ago. Someone he hadn't thought about in years. His chest tightened. A quiet breath left his lips. No. The word slipped out before he could stop it. His eyes dropped back to the shoes. Really looking at them now. Not just seeing them, but remembering. The way they were worn at the edges. The slight crease near the toe. The way the leather had faded unevenly. Details he hadn't noticed before. Or maybe hadn't allowed himself to. Max shifted again. Just slightly. As if sensing the change. As if knowing. Daniel was getting closer. Closer to something important. Closer to something he wasn't ready for. The hallway felt smaller now. The light dimmer. The air heavier. Daniel's throat tightened. Because those shoes, they didn't just belong to anyone. They belonged to someone who wasn't supposed to be part of his life anymore. Someone who was gone. Gone in a way that didn't leave room for return. And yet, here they were. Right in front of him. And Max, faithful steady Max, refused to let them be ignored. Daniel took a slow step back. His mind racing now, trying to make sense of something that didn't fit. That couldn't fit. Max didn't follow. He stayed exactly where he was. Guarding. Waiting. Holding that silent line. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. His breath uneven now. Max, he said quietly. But this time, he wasn't asking what was wrong. He was asking something else. Something deeper. Something heavier. Because whatever Max was sensing, whatever had pulled him to that door, whatever had made him stand there like this, it wasn't random. It wasn't nothing. It was something real. Something important. Something unfinished. Daniel looked at the shoes one last time, then back at Max. And in the quiet stillness of that hallway, with the morning light barely reaching them, a single thought settled in his mind. Heavy. Unshakable. 'Cause those shoes should not have been there. And yet, Max wouldn't leave them. Wouldn't ignore them. Wouldn't let Daniel get close. As if they weren't just a memory. As if they were a message. Daniel swallowed hard. His voice barely a whisper now. What are you trying to show me? Max didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because something had already begun. Something neither of them could stop. And whatever waited behind that moment, whatever truth lay hidden in those quiet, worn shoes, it was about to change everything. Daniel didn't touch the shoes. Not after that moment. Not after the way Max had looked at him. He stepped back slowly, then turned away. All right, he murmured, more to himself than to the dog. We'll just leave them. Max didn't relax. Not completely. But the tension in his body softened, just enough to let Daniel move past him without resistance. Still, his eyes followed. Every step. Every movement. As if he didn't trust the moment to stay quiet. The morning continued. Or at least it tried to. Daniel returned to the kitchen, picked up his coffee and took a sip. It had already cooled. He didn't notice. His thoughts weren't in the room anymore. They lingered back in the hallway. With the shoes. With that scent. With the strange, unshakable feeling pressing against his chest. Max remained near the door. Not pacing now. Not barking. Just there. Watching. Guarding. Waiting. Daniel forced himself into motion. Keys from the counter. Wallet from the drawer. Phone from the charger. Routine. He needed routine. Something normal to hold on to. He walked back toward the hallway. Slower this time. Careful. As if stepping into the same space might bring everything back. Max turned his head the moment Daniel appeared. Alert again. Not panicked. But ready. Daniel stopped a few feet away. The shoes were still there. Unchanged. Silent. Innocent if you didn't look too closely. He let out a quiet breath. Okay, he said softly. I'm just grabbing my jacket. Max didn't move. But his ears lifted slightly. Watching. Daniel stepped forward. One step. Then another. He kept his distance from the shoes this time, reaching carefully toward the coat rack beside the door. His fingers brushed the fabric. Pulled it free. Nothing happened. No sound. No movement. Just silence. He almost smiled. See, he said quietly, glancing at Max. It's fine. For a moment. Felt like it might be. Then Max moved. Fast. 2 quick steps forward. Placing himself between Daniel and the shoes again. A low whine slipped out. Soft but urgent. Daniel froze. His hand still gripping the jacket. Max. The dog's body stiffened once more. Not aggressive. Not fearful. Just certain. His gaze locked onto the shoes again. Unblinking. Daniel followed that gaze. Back to them. Something shifted inside him. A quiet unease turning sharper now. More defined. Because it wasn't just the shoes anymore. It was the pattern. The way Max kept returning to them. Over and over again. As if something was happening there. Something Daniel couldn't see. A faint sound echoed from outside. Footsteps on the sidewalk. Distant voices. Normal life moving on. But inside the house, everything felt paused. Held in place. Waiting. Daniel swallowed. Then slowly, he crouched again, keeping his movements gentle, measured. I'm not going to touch them, he said softly. Okay. Max didn't react, but he didn't relax either. Daniel leaned slightly closer, not reaching this time, just observing, looking, really looking. The leather caught the dim light, soft reflections along the worn edges. A thin layer of dust had settled near the soles, but not evenly. There were faint marks on the floor around them, subtle, almost invisible, like they had been moved recently. Daniel's breath hitched. That's not possible. He whispered it without thinking, because he knew. He hadn't touched them. Not in months. Not since. He stopped the thought. Didn't let it finish. Didn't let it form. But it lingered anyway. Unspoken. Heavy. Max let out another quiet whine. This one softer than before. Almost pleading. Daniel looked at him. Really looked. At the tension in his shoulders. The way his tail stayed low still. The tiny tremble in his front legs. Max wasn't confused. He wasn't reacting randomly. He was trying to communicate something. Something important. Daniel exhaled slowly. Okay, he said under his breath. Okay, I see you. A pause. Then, just give me a second. He stood up again, ran a hand across his face, tried to steady himself. The house felt different now. Not threatening, not dangerous, but aware. As if it was holding something just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered, waiting for Daniel to notice. Max didn't leave the door, not even for a second. When Daniel stepped back into the kitchen, he stayed. When Daniel moved toward the living room, he stayed. Always in that same spot. Always watching. Always guarding. Minutes passed. Slowly, quietly, Daniel tried to distract himself. He turned on the TV. Muted. Just for the light. The movement. Something to break the stillness. But it didn't help. Because every few seconds, his eyes drifted back toward the hallway. Toward that space. Toward the unseen line Max refused to cross. Then, a new sound. Soft. Barely there. A faint scrape. Daniel's head lifted instantly. The TV flickered silently in the background. He turned toward the hallway. Listen. Nothing. Just silence again. Stillness. But his heart had already started to race. Did you hear that? He called quietly. Max didn't bark. Didn't move. But his ears. They shifted. Forward. Locked. Daniel stood up slowly. Every step toward the hallway felt heavier now. More deliberate. The light had changed. It wasn't as warm anymore. Shadows stretched longer across the floor. The shoes sat exactly where they had been. But something about them felt different. Closer. More present. As if they were no longer just objects, but part of something unfolding. Max stepped slightly to the side this time. Not fully blocking, but still near. Still protective. Daniel paused, noticing the change. You're letting me look, he whispered. Max didn't respond, but he didn't stop him either. Daniel crouched again, closer than before. His hand rested against his knee, steadying himself. His breathing slowed. In, out. Then, he noticed it. A small detail, almost hidden, near the inside edge of one shoe. A fold in the leather, slightly lifted, as if something was tucked inside. His eyes narrowed, focus sharpening. What is that? He leaned closer. Careful. Slow. Max didn't interfere, but he watched closely. Every movement. Every inch. Daniel hesitated. Just for a second. Then, he reached. Not into the shoe, but toward that small fold. 2 fingers. Gentle. Careful. He lifted it slightly. The leather creaked softly. Old. Dry. And there, just beneath, something white. Faded. Thin. Like paper. Daniel's breath caught. His hand froze midair. Max let out a quiet sound. Not warning. Not fear. Something else. Recognition. Daniel pulled his hand back. Heart pounding now. Faster. Stronger. Because this changed everything. Those shoes weren't just sitting there. They were holding something. Something hidden. Something left behind. He looked at Max. Eyes wide now. Uncertain. What is this? He whispered. Max held his gaze. Steady. Unmoving. As if to say, keep going. Daniel turned back to the shoes. The room felt quieter than ever. The air heavier. Time slower. He swallowed hard. Then shifted forward again. His hand trembling just slightly now. Not from fear. But from something deeper. Something rising. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Carefully, he reached toward the shoe again. This time, he didn't stop. His fingers slid inside. Brushed against the paper. Soft. Fragile. Real. He froze for just a second. Eyes closing briefly. Then, he pulled it out. Slowly. Deliberately. A folded piece of paper. Worn. Yellowed at the edges. But intact. Waiting. Daniel stared at it. Not opening it. Not yet. Just holding it in his hand. As if the moment itself needed space to breathe. Max stepped closer. Quietly. Standing beside him now. No longer blocking. No longer guarding. Just present. Daniel looked down at the paper again. His throat tightened. Because deep down, before he even unfolded it, he already knew. This wasn't random. This wasn't nothing. This was a message. Left behind. Waiting to be found. He took a slow breath. His fingers moved. Careful. Gentle. Beginning to unfold the edges. And then, he stopped. Just before opening it. A sudden thought hitting him. Sharp. Clear. Unavoidable. Because if he opened it, everything might change. Everything he had left behind. Everything he had pushed away. Everything connected to those shoes. Daniel looked at Max one more time. Searching. Hoping. But Max didn't look away. Didn't hesitate. Didn't doubt. He simply stood there. Quiet. Certain. And in that silence, Daniel understood. This wasn't something to ignore. This wasn't something to put back. This was something he had to face. His fingers tightened slightly around the paper. His breath slowed. The moment stretched. Thin. Fragile. Unavoidable. And just as he began to unfold it, the truth waiting inside, his heart whispered something he couldn't ignore. Because whatever was written on that page, it had been waiting for him. All this time, Daniel didn't open the paper. Not right away. His fingers loosened slightly, then tightened again. The fold remained sealed. Unbroken. He stared at it for a long moment, as if the answer might reveal itself without him needing to look. Max stood close beside him now. Quiet. Still. His presence steady grounding. But his eyes, they never left Daniel's hands. A slow breath escaped Daniel's lips. No, he whispered softly. Not like this. He shook his head once almost instinctively, as if pushing something away before it had the chance to settle. It's probably nothing. The words sounded thin, uncertain, but he held on to them anyway, because the alternative felt heavier than he was ready for. Carefully he refolded the paper, smoothing the edges, trying to restore it to exactly how it had been. Like the moment hadn't happened, like he hadn't seen it, like he didn't feel what he was feeling. Then, slowly, he slid it back into the shoe, tucking it beneath the worn leather fold. Out of sight, Max shifted instantly. A quiet, strained whine slipped from his throat. Not loud, but filled with something unmistakable. Disapproval. Daniel glanced at him. It's okay, he said quickly. We'll check it later. Max didn't move. Didn't relax. If anything, his posture stiffened again. The tension returned. Stronger this time. Daniel stood up, brushing his hands together as if shaking off something invisible. Let's not make this bigger than it is, he muttered. But his voice lacked conviction. He turned away from the door, walked back toward the kitchen, each step just a little faster than before. Behind him, Max didn't follow. Not immediately. The dog remained near the shoes, still guarding, still watching, as if unwilling to leave them alone again. Daniel grabbed his coffee. Cold now. He didn't care. He took a sip anyway, winced slightly, then set it down harder than he meant to. The sound echoed in the quiet room. Sharp. Out of place. He ran a hand through his hair. Exhaled. Tried to steady himself. It's just an old note, he said under his breath. Probably something I forgot. A pause. Then softer. Yeah, that's all. But the words didn't settle. They hovered. Unconvincing. From the hallway. A soft sound. A shift. Max's nails against the floor. Then, another whine. Longer this time. More insistent. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Tension building behind them. Max, he called, trying to keep his tone light. Come here, buddy. No response. Only silence. Then, a single sharp bark. Daniel's eyes opened. A flicker of frustration crossed his face. Hey! Another bark. Short. Urgent. Not playful. Not random. Focused. Daniel turned toward the hallway again. Slower this time. Less patient. All right, what is it now? He stepped forward. Back into that dim stretch of the house. Back toward the door. Back toward the shoes. Max stood exactly where he had been. But something had changed. His stance was firmer now. More grounded. As if he had made a decision. And wasn't going to back down from it. Daniel stopped a few feet away. His arms crossed loosely. Trying to keep control of the moment. Okay, you're doing this again. Max let out a low sound. Not quite a growl. But deeper than before. Daniel sighed. This isn't like you, he said. You don't just fixate on things. He gestured lightly toward the shoes. They've been there forever. A pause. Then, so what's the deal? Max stepped forward. One step. Then another. Closing the distance between them. But instead of blocking this time, he did something different. He nudged Daniel's hand. Gently. Deliberately. Daniel blinked. Caught off guard. What? Max nudged him again. Then turned. Walked back to the shoes. Looked at them. Then back at Daniel. The message was clear. Come here. Look again. Daniel hesitated. His jaw tightened slightly. Max. He shook his head. I already saw it. A beat. I just don't think it's what you think it is. Max didn't move. Didn't bark. Didn't push further. He simply stood there. Waiting. Daniel stepped forward. Slowly. Reluctantly. The space between them closing once again. But this time, it felt heavier. More charged. He crouched halfway. Not fully committing. Just enough to be closer. Close enough to see. But not to act. His eyes drifted to the shoes. Then away. Then back again. Avoiding. Returning. Caught between instinct and resistance. It's probably old, he said quietly. Something I forgot to throw away. His voice softened. Almost pleading now. Not everything has to mean something. Max tilted his head slightly. Ears twitching. As if listening to something Daniel couldn't hear. Then, slowly, he sat down. Right beside the shoes. The movement was calm. Intentional. Grounded. Daniel watched him. Something about that simple action. The stillness of it. Shifted the air again. Because Max wasn't agitated now. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't barking. He was just there. Present. Steady. Certain. And somehow, that made it harder to ignore. Daniel exhaled slowly. His shoulders dropping just slightly. Why now? He murmured. The question barely audible. But heavy. His gaze returned to the shoes. Really looking again. Not just at them. But at what they represented. What they carried. What they held. A flicker of memory brushed against the edge of his mind. Soft. Distant. Unfinished. He pulled away from it. Quickly. Too quickly. No, he said again. More firmly this time. We're not doing this today. He stood up. Turned away. Started walking. Behind him. Max didn't follow. 3 steps. 4. Then. A sound. Soft. Familiar. The faint scrape again. Daniel stopped. Mid-step. His breath caught. Slowly. He turned back. The hallway was still. The light unchanged. Max sat exactly where he had been. Unmoving. But the shoes. Daniel frowned. His eyes narrowing. Something was off. Not dramatic. Not obvious. But different. He stepped closer. Careful. Measured. His heartbeat picked up again. That quiet rhythm growing louder in his chest. The angle. That was it. The angle of the shoe. It had shifted. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But enough. Daniel's breath slowed. Then deepened. Because he knew. He hadn't touched them. Not since putting the paper back. His eyes flicked to Max. The dog didn't move. Didn't react. Just watched. Did you? Daniel started. Then stopped. Because he already knew the answer. Max hadn't touched them. The silence in the hallway thickened. Pressing in. Holding everything still. Daniel crouched again. This time. Lower. Closer. More focused. His hand hovered near the shoe. Not touching. Just there. The air felt cooler again. That faint scent. Returning. Stronger now. Clearer. Daniel inhaled slowly. And this time, he recognized it. His chest tightened instantly. His throat dry. No way. The words barely formed. Because that scent. It wasn't just familiar. It was specific. Personal. Unmistakable. It belonged to someone he hadn't seen in years. Someone he had tried. Quietly. To forget. His hand trembled slightly. Still hovering. Still unsure. Behind him. Max stood up. Slowly. Stepping closer. Not blocking. Not guarding. Just beside him. Present. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. Max, this isn't funny. But there was no humor in it. No lightness. Only tension. Only weight. Because something was happening. Something he couldn't explain. Something he couldn't ignore anymore. And yet, he still wasn't ready to face it. He pulled his hand back. Quickly. Stood up. Stepped away. No, he said firmly. We're done here. Max didn't protest. Didn't bark. Didn't stop him. He simply watched. As Daniel walked away again. Faster this time. More certain. More determined to leave it behind. But even as he moved, even as he put distance between himself and the door, he felt it. That pull. That quiet, persistent feeling. Like something unfinished was waiting. Like something important had just been missed. And deep down, beneath the doubt, beneath the resistance, beneath the need to explain it all away, Daniel knew one thing. Clear. Unavoidable. He wasn't misreading the moment. He was avoiding it. And whatever truth waited inside those shoes, it wasn't going anywhere. The house didn't feel the same anymore. It looked the same. The same walls. The same quiet corners. But something underneath it all had shifted. Subtle but constant. Daniel tried to ignore it. He moved through the living room slowly, picking up small things, putting them down again. Straightening a book. Adjusting a cushion. Pointless movements. Anything to stay busy. Anything to avoid going back to the hallway. Behind him. Max didn't follow. Not this time. The absence was noticeable. Heavy. Daniel paused mid-step. Listen. No footsteps. No soft tail against the wall. No quiet breathing nearby. Just silence. He turned slightly. Looked toward the hallway. The light there had dimmed further. Shadows stretching longer now. Creeping across the floor like slow-moving water. Max was still there. A quiet shape near the door. Watching. Daniel looked away quickly. No, he murmured under his breath. We're not doing this again. But the words felt weaker now. Less certain. He walked into the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Closed it. Didn't take anything. His reflection caught faintly in the window. For a second, he didn't recognize himself. Not fully. Because the calm from earlier was gone. Replaced by something tighter. Something restless. A sound broke the stillness. Soft. Faint. Daniel froze. His head tilted slightly. Listening. There it was again. A light uneven scrape. From the hallway. His breath slowed. Careful. Measured. Max, he called quietly. No bark. No movement. Just silence. Daniel stepped forward. One slow step. Then another. Drawn back despite himself. The hallway felt colder now. The warmth from the morning gone completely. Only dim light remained, thin and gray. Max stood near the shoes again. But something about him had changed. He wasn't stiff. Wasn't tense. He was focused, completely still, eyes fixed on the floor near the shoes, not even blinking. Daniel's chest tightened. "Hey," he said softly. No response. He moved closer, carefully, watching Max, watching the space around him. The shoes were there, just like before. But, again, something felt off. Daniel crouched slightly, not all the way, just enough to lower his view. The angle had changed. Again. This time, more noticeable. One shoe had shifted just a few inches forward. Barely, but enough to break the pattern. Enough to matter. Daniel swallowed. "That's not possible." His voice was barely there. He looked at Max. "You didn't touch them, did you?" Max didn't react. Didn't even glance at him. His attention remained locked on something else. Daniel followed that gaze. Down. To the floor. At first, he saw nothing. Just wood. Faint scratches. Normal wear. Then, he noticed it. A thin line. Faint. Almost invisible. A trail. Like something had been dragged. His breath caught. Because the line, it didn't lead away from the shoes. It led to them. From deeper inside the house. Daniel leaned closer. His pulse quickening. The trail was subtle. Interrupted. But there. And at the end of it, right where the shoes rested, the marks were stronger. More defined. As if something had stopped there. Daniel's throat tightened. "Max." His voice trembled slightly now. Max finally moved. Just a little. He lowered his head, closer to the shoes, and let out a quiet, trembling breath. Not fear. Not warning. Recognition. Daniel's heart began to pound. Harder now. Faster. Because this wasn't just strange anymore. This was deliberate. His eyes moved slowly across the floor, following the faint trail backward. Step by step. Line by line. It led past the living room, past the edge of the hallway, toward a door. Closed. At the far end of the house. Daniel's stomach dropped slightly. That door. He hadn't opened it in months. Maybe longer. He stared at it now. From a distance. Still. Silent. Unchanged. But suddenly, it didn't feel like just a door anymore. Felt connected. To the shoes. To the scent. To the paper. To everything. A quiet pressure built in his chest. "Don't," he whispered to himself. But his feet. They shifted anyway. One small step forward. Max reacted instantly. A soft whine. Daniel stopped. Looked back. Max wasn't blocking him. But his eyes. They were different now. Concerned. Uncertain. As if even he didn't know what would happen next. Daniel hesitated. The space between him and that door suddenly felt enormous. Heavy. Filled with something unseen. He exhaled slowly. "This is nothing," he said quietly. But his voice betrayed him. Because it didn't feel like nothing. Felt like something waiting. Something patient. Something that had been there all along. Just unnoticed. Daniel turned back toward the shoes. As if grounding himself. Max stepped closer again. Standing beside them. Beside him. A silent anchor. Daniel crouched once more. This time. Fully. His hand hovered near the shoe again. The same one. The one with the folded paper inside. He didn't touch it. Not yet. But he didn't pull away either. His breath slowed. Then deepened. The scent was stronger now. Clear. Undeniable. And with it, memories. Not full images. Not complete thoughts. Just fragments. A voice. Soft. Familiar. A laugh. Fading. A moment. Half remembered. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut briefly. "No," he whispered again. But this time, it sounded different. Less denial. More fear. Because the truth, whatever it was getting closer. Closer than he could push away. Max shifted beside him, leaning slightly. Not against him, but near enough to be felt. A quiet presence. A steady one. Daniel opened his eyes again. Looked at the shoes. Really looked. Not as objects, but as something left behind. Something carrying weight. Meaning. And suddenly, he realized something. Max hadn't been guarding the shoes. Not really. He had been guarding the moment, waiting for Daniel to reach it, to see what he needed to see. Daniel's hand trembled slightly, still hovering, still unsure. The hallway felt silent, too silent. Even the outside sounds had faded. Everything had narrowed to this space, this moment, this choice. He could walk away again, pretend it meant nothing, leave it behind, or he could finally face it. His fingers moved slightly, closer. Max didn't stop him, didn't react, just watched, waited, because the unease that had been building all morning, the quiet tension, the subtle signs, the small unexplainable shifts, they were all leading here, to this exact moment. Daniel swallowed hard, and for the first time, he didn't pull back. But just as his fingers brushed the edge of the shoe, a sound broke the silence. Sharp, sudden, from the closed door at the end of the hallway. Daniel froze. His head snapped up. Max stiffened instantly, ears raised high, body alert. The sound came again, a faint knock. From inside, Daniel's heart slammed against his chest, because that door had been closed for months, and no one was supposed to be behind it. The unease wasn't quiet anymore. It had found its voice. The knock didn't come again, but the silence that followed felt louder, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. Daniel didn't move, not at first. His body stayed frozen in place, crouched near the shoes, one hand still hovering, suspended between choice and hesitation. Max stood beside him, completely still, ears raised, eyes fixed down the hallway, toward that closed door. Another second passed, then another. Nothing. Daniel exhaled slowly, too slowly, as if any sudden movement might break something fragile in the air. That was nothing, he whispered. But his voice didn't believe him. Max let out a quiet sound. Low, uneasy, not fear, but awareness. Daniel swallowed. His gaze flickered between the door and the shoes, between the past and whatever was trying to reach him now. No, he said again, softer this time, tired. We're not doing this halfway. His eyes dropped back to the shoe, the fold in the leather, the place where the paper was hidden, waiting. Max shifted slightly, not stopping him, not pushing, just there. Daniel took a breath, then another, slower, deeper, and this time, he didn't pull away. His fingers slid into the shoe again, careful, gentle. They brushed the paper, soft, familiar. For a moment, he froze, eyes closing briefly, as if bracing himself. Then, he pulled it out. The folded note rested in his hand, light, fragile, but carrying something far heavier. Daniel stared at it, longer this time. No turning away, no pretending. His thumb traced the edge of the fold, worn, slightly uneven, like it had been opened before, handled, kept. A memory stirred, faint but growing. He had seen this before. Not here, not like this, but somewhere, sometime, in a moment he had buried deep. His chest tightened. Okay, he whispered. Slowly, he unfolded the paper. The crease opened with a soft sound. Dry, delicate. Inside, a few lines. Handwritten. Daniel's breath caught instantly, because he recognized the handwriting. Before he even read a word, he knew. His fingers trembled slightly. No, but his eyes were already moving, already reading. If you find this, it means I didn't get the chance to say goodbye the right way. Daniel blinked. Once. Hard. The words blurred for a second, then sharpened again. I didn't want to leave things unfinished. A quiet breath left him. Shaky. Max stepped closer, gently, pressing his side just slightly against Daniel's arm, grounding him. Daniel continued. I know you don't like holding on to things. You always said it's easier to let go. His throat tightened. That voice. Not heard, but remembered. Clear now. But some things aren't meant to be forgotten. Daniel's vision blurred again. He didn't wipe it away. I left this where you'd see it. Eventually. A pause. Take care of yourself. And don't shut people out the way you shut me out. Daniel's breath caught sharply. The last line. Shorter. Softer. I'll always be around in the ways that matter. Silence. Daniel lowered the paper slowly, his hand resting against his knee. The hallway felt distant now. Muted. Everything inside him. Loud. Max stayed close. Quiet. Unmoving. Daniel shook his head slightly. Once. Then again. No, this doesn't make sense, he whispered. But it did. That was the problem. It made too much sense. Because the handwriting. It belonged to her. Emily. The name settled in his mind like something long avoided. He hadn't said it out loud in years. Hadn't needed to. Hadn't wanted to. A slow breath left his chest. She wouldn't, he murmured. But the words didn't finish. Because the truth was already there. Emily had always done things like this. Small gestures. Quiet messages. Things you didn't notice right away, but stayed with you once you did. Daniel's grip tightened slightly around the paper. The memories came faster now. Not fragments anymore, but moments. Her sitting by the window laughing at something small. Her voice calling his name from another room. The way she used to leave notes. Simple ones. Thoughtful ones. Hidden in places he wouldn't expect. A habit. Quiet way of being present. Even when she wasn't. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. I didn't shut you out, he whispered. But the words felt hollow. Because he had. Not all at once. Not intentionally. But slowly. Quietly. Pulling back. Avoiding the harder conversations. Letting distance grow where connection used to be. Until one day, there was nothing left to hold on to. And then, she was gone. The memory of that moment hit him harder now. The call. Late. Unexpected. The words that didn't feel real. He hadn't gone back to that part of the house since. Hadn't opened that door. Hadn't looked for anything she might have left behind. Because it was easier that way. Easier to move forward. Or at least, pretend to. Max shifted slightly beside him. His presence steady. Unwavering. Daniel looked down at him. Eyes softening. You knew, he said quietly. Max didn't react. But his gaze remained calm. Certain. As if this had never been a question. Daniel looked back at the shoes. They weren't just shoes anymore. They were a place. A moment. A memory left waiting. And suddenly, the trail on the floor made sense. The faint marks. Leading from the closed door. To here. Daniel's breath slowed. Because Emily. She had worn these shoes. Often. They had been hers. And he had moved them. Packed them away. Hidden them from view. Not because he wanted to forget. But because he didn't know how to remember. A quiet realization settled over him. This wasn't random, he whispered. Max's ears flicked slightly. Daniel's eyes drifted down the hallway. Toward the closed door. The knock. The trail. The note. It all pointed back there. Back to the place he had avoided. The place he had left untouched. Because it hurt too much to face. Max stepped forward. Just slightly. Then paused. Waiting. Daniel followed his gaze. The door stood at the end of the hallway. Still closed. Still silent. But now, it felt different. Not threatening. Not unknown. But unfinished. A space holding something he had left behind. Something Emily had tried. In her own quiet way. To bring him back to. Daniel looked down at the note again. His fingers softened around it. Careful. Respectful. She knew I'd avoid it, he murmured. Max blinked slowly. Daniel let out a small breath. Almost a laugh. But not quite. Of course she did. The tension in his chest shifted. Still there. Still heavy. But different now. Not confusion. Not fear. Understanding. And something else. Just beneath it. Regret. Max stepped closer again. His shoulder brushing lightly against Daniel's side. A quiet reminder. You're not alone. Daniel nodded slightly. Not to Max. But to himself. Okay. He said softly. His voice steadier now. I get it. He looked at the door again. Longer this time. No turning away. No hesitation. Because the connection was clear now. The shoes hadn't brought the memory back. They had led him to it. And whatever waited behind that door, it wasn't something to avoid anymore. It was something to face. Daniel stood up slowly, the note still in his hand. Max moved with him, step for step. They stood side by side in the quiet hallway, looking forward, at the place where everything had stopped, and where something new was about to begin. Daniel stood still for a long moment. The note rested in his hand, light, fragile but steady. Max waited beside him, quiet, present. The hallway stretched ahead, longer than it should have felt. The closed door at the end, no longer distant, just waiting. Daniel exhaled slowly, then took a step. The floor creaked softly beneath his weight. A familiar sound, one he hadn't heard from this part of the house in a long time. Max followed, close, not leading, not pushing, just there. Step by step, they moved forward. The air changed as they got closer, cooler, stiller. Daniel's hand tightened slightly around the note. His other hand, empty, uncertain. When he reached the door, he stopped, right in front of it. The wood looked the same, unmarked, unchanged. But now, it felt different. He hadn't touched this handle in months, maybe longer. His fingers hovered near it, then pulled back. A breath. In, out. Max shifted beside him. A soft movement. Gentle. Daniel glanced down. Max's eyes met his. Calm. Steady. No fear. No hesitation. Just quiet encouragement. Daniel nodded once. Barely. Okay, he whispered. Then, slowly, he reached out. His hand closed around the handle. Cool metal against his skin. For a second, he didn't move. Because opening that door meant stepping into something he had avoided for a long time. Memories, feelings, moments left unfinished. His jaw tightened slightly. Then, he turned the handle. A soft click. The door opened. Slowly, the hinges gave a faint creak. Dry, unused. A thin line of light slipped into the room. Dust floated in the beam. Still, undisturbed. Daniel pushed the door wider. The room revealed itself piece by piece. Quiet, frozen, exactly as it had been left. The bed, neatly made. The curtains, half drawn. A chair by the window, with a folded blanket draped over it. Everything in its place, untouched. Daniel stepped inside. The air carried a faint scent. Soft, familiar. His breath caught, as it wasn't just memory now. It was real. Max entered slowly behind him. His step softer here. More careful. He moved past Daniel slightly, then stopped. His nose lifted, taking in the space, recognizing it. Daniel's eyes moved around the room. Slowly, carefully. Every detail pulled at something inside him. The books on the shelf. The small framed photo on the dresser. The way the light fell across the floor. Nothing had changed, because he hadn't allowed it to. He had closed the door, and left everything exactly as it was, as if time might pause with it. But now, standing here, he felt it. Time hadn't stopped. It had just waited. Max walked forward, not randomly, not exploring, purposefully. He crossed the room slowly, then stopped near the far side of the bed. Daniel watched, a quiet tension returning. Max? The dog lowered his head slightly, sniffing, then took one small step to the left, paused, and looked down. Daniel followed. Carefully, he stepped closer. The floorboards creaked again. Soft, uneven. Then, he saw it, near the edge of the bed. Another faint mark, similar to the one in the hallway. A subtle trail. But this one was clearer, more defined, leading, from the side of the room, to a small wooden chest near the wall. Daniel's breath slowed. That wasn't there before, he whispered. Max stood still, watching the chest, waiting. Daniel hesitated. The room felt smaller now, quieter. Every sound muted, every movement amplified. He stepped closer to the chest. It sat low against the wall, simple, unremarkable. But now, it felt important, connected. Daniel crouched slowly. His hand hovered over the lid. Then, stop. A flicker of doubt. What if this is, he started, but didn't finish. Max shifted closer, his shoulder brushing lightly against Daniel's arm. A steady presence. Daniel exhaled. Right. His fingers touched the lid. The wood was smooth. Cool. He lifted it. Slowly. The hinges moved without sound. Inside. A few items. Neatly placed. Undisturbed. A folded scarf. A small notebook. And beneath them, a sealed envelope. Daniel's breath caught. Because the envelope had his name on it. Written in the same handwriting. Emily's. His chest tightened instantly. No way, he whispered. Max remained still. Watching. Daniel reached in. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up the envelope. Felt heavier than it should have. Not physically, but emotionally. Because this wasn't just a memory. This was something left behind. Intentionally. Carefully. For him. His thumb traced the edge of the envelope. Still sealed. Untouched. Waiting. Daniel sat back slightly, the room spinning just a little. He looked around. Everything here, every object, every detail, was part of a moment he had walked away from. And yet, Emily had stayed present in it. Through this, through what she had left behind. Max lowered himself to the floor beside him. Quiet. Patient. Daniel looked down at the envelope again. His voice barely a whisper. She knew I'd come back. A pause. Eventually, his fingers moved to the seal. Slowly, carefully, he opened it. The paper inside slid free. Another letter. Longer this time. Daniel unfolded it. His breath shallow. His eyes moved across the page. Daniel. He swallowed. If you're reading this, it means Max did his job. Daniel blinked. A small fragile smile flickered across his face. He always does, he murmured softly. Max's tail gave the faintest movement. Barely there. Daniel continued. I didn't want to leave everything unsaid. I know you don't like big conversations, so I figured I'd leave you something quieter. His chest tightened again. You don't have to hold on to the past. But don't close yourself off from it either. Daniel's grip on the paper softened. There are parts of it that still matter. Parts that can help you move forward. If you let them. A tear slipped down his cheek. Quiet. Unnoticed. Take care of Max. He understands more than we think. Daniel let out a soft breath. I know. His voice cracked slightly. He looked down at Max. The dog rested calmly beside him. Eyes soft. Still. And take care of yourself too. You deserve more than just getting by. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. The words settled deep. Not heavy, but warm. I never stopped believing that you'd find your way back to what matters. His breath slowed. Even if it took time. The last line. Simple. I'm proud of you. Silence. Daniel lowered the letter slowly. The room felt different now. Not frozen. Not untouched. Alive. Filled with something gentle. Something steady. Max shifted slightly. Leaning closer. Daniel reached down. His hand resting softly against Max's back. Thank you, he whispered. Max didn't move. Didn't need to. Because everything that needed to be said had already been understood. Daniel looked around the room one more time. Not with avoidance. Not with distance. But with clarity. The discovery wasn't just the letter. It was the connection. Still there. Still present. Not something to run from, but something to carry forward. He folded the letter carefully, held it close, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel didn't feel like he was standing still. He felt like he was moving, quietly, gently, but forward. Daniel didn't leave the room right away. He remained where he was, sitting on the floor beside the open chest, the letter still resting in his hands. The quiet around him no longer felt heavy. It felt settled. Max stayed close, lying beside him, his breathing slow and even. Every now and then, his tail gave a soft, reassuring tap against the floor. Daniel looked around the room again. But this time he wasn't just seeing objects. He was seeing moments. The chair by the window wasn't just furniture. It was where Emily used to sit in the late afternoons, reading, sometimes glancing outside as if she were listening to something beyond the noise of the world. The folded blanket still rested exactly where she had left it. He stood up slowly, carefully, as if the room deserved that kind of respect. Max rose with him, stretching lightly before stepping closer. "You stayed," Daniel said quietly, glancing down at him. "Even when I didn't." Max's ears flicked gently, his eyes soft and attentive. Daniel exhaled. A long breath. Not heavy this time. Just real. He stepped toward the window. The light had shifted now, softer than before, leaning toward afternoon. It filled the room in a different way, warming corners that had been in shadow for months. He reached for the curtain, hesitated, then pulled it open. Sunlight spread fully across the floor. Dust shimmered in the air again, but it didn't feel abandoned anymore. It felt like something waking up. Daniel let his hand rest against the window frame. For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly, almost under his breath, he spoke. "I'm sorry." The words were simple, but they carried everything he hadn't said before. Max stepped closer and pressed gently against his leg. Daniel didn't look down this time. He just let it happen. Accepted it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of things that didn't need to be explained anymore. After a while, Daniel moved back toward the chest. He knelt again, placing the letter carefully inside, but not hiding it. Not tucking it away out of sight. He left it where it could be found. Where it could be remembered. He picked up the scarf next. Soft. Familiar. He ran his fingers across the fabric, a faint smile touching his face. "I remember this," he said quietly. Max watched him, calm and steady. Daniel folded the scarf again, but this time he didn't put it back into the chest. Instead, he placed it gently on the bed. A small change, but a meaningful one. He wasn't preserving the past anymore. He was letting it exist, out in the open, as part of the present. He stood again and looked around the room. There was no rush now, no need to escape. Only a quiet understanding that this space didn't have to remain frozen. It could change. Slowly, naturally, just like him. Max moved toward the door, then paused, looking back. Waiting. Daniel noticed. A small nod followed. "Yeah," he said softly. "We're not done yet." But his tone had changed. There was no resistance in it. Only readiness. They stepped out of the room together. Back into the hallway. The light there felt different now too. Not dim. Just softer. More balanced. Daniel walked toward the front door. Toward the shoes. They were still there. Exactly where they had been. But they didn't feel heavy anymore. They didn't carry confusion or fear. They felt understood. Max approached them first this time. No tension. No guarding. He simply stood near them, calm and relaxed. Daniel followed. He crouched down slowly, reaching for the shoes without hesitation. Max didn't stop him. Didn't react. He just watched. Daniel picked them up gently, turning them slightly in his hands. The worn leather. The familiar shape. He smiled faintly. "She really liked these," he said quietly. Max's tail moved once. Soft. Steady. Daniel set the shoes down again, but not in the same position. He moved them slightly to the side. Near the wall. Out of the center of the space. Not hidden. Just placed. Intentionally. Then he stood. Looking around the hallway. It felt lighter. More open. As if something had shifted inside the walls themselves. But he knew it wasn't the house. It was him. Max stepped closer again, brushing lightly against his side. Daniel reached down, resting his hand on Max's head. A quiet moment passed between them. Unspoken, but deeply understood. "You didn't just find it," Daniel said softly. "You waited for me to be ready." Max looked up at him, calm as ever. Daniel let out a small breath. Not tired. Not heavy. Just peaceful. "I think I am now." They stood there together for a while. No rush. No urgency. Just presence. The kind that doesn't ask for anything more. And in that quiet space, something inside Daniel settled for the first time in a long while. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. Enough to move forward. Enough to carry the past without being held back by it. Enough to understand that healing doesn't happen all at once. It begins in small moments. Like opening a door. Like reading a letter. like finally listening to what had been there all along. Max walked ahead toward the living room, then paused again, looking back as if to make sure Daniel was coming. Daniel smiled, a real one this time, and followed. Because now, for the first time since that quiet morning began, he wasn't avoiding anything anymore. He was simply moving forward. Together. The house felt different the next morning. Not brighter, not louder, just lighter. Daniel noticed it the moment he opened his eyes. There was no tightness in his chest. No lingering weight pressing against his thoughts. Just a quiet sense of space. He sat up slowly. The same routine waited for him. Shoes. Coffee. Keys. But this time, it didn't feel like something to hide behind. Max was already awake. Curled near the doorway, head resting on his paws, watching. Always watching. But not with urgency anymore. Just calm awareness. Daniel smiled faintly. "Morning," he said softly. Max's tail moved once. Slow. Easy. Daniel stood, stretching slightly before walking into the hallway. His steps were steady now. Unhurried. The front door came into view. And beside it, the shoes. They were exactly where he had placed them. Near the wall. Not in the way. Not forgotten. Just present. Daniel paused for a moment, looking at them. Not with confusion. Not with resistance. With understanding. "They're staying," he said quietly. Max walked up beside him. No tension. No guarding. Just standing there. Daniel crouched down. Picked up the shoes gently, turning them in his hands. "They don't have to mean something heavy," he murmured. "They can just mean something real." Max watched him. Ears relaxed. Eyes soft. Daniel set the shoes back down carefully. Exactly where they belonged now. He stood again. Took a slow breath. Then, he turned. Walking down the hallway. Not past the closed door this time, but toward an open one. Emily's room. The door remained open from the night before. Sunlight slipped inside freely, filling the space without resistance. Daniel stepped in. No hesitation. The room had changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But to him, everything felt different. The curtain was open. The bed carried a soft fold where he had placed the scarf. The chest sat where it always had. But it no longer felt like something sealed away. Max entered quietly behind him. Moving slower here. Respectful. Daniel walked to the window. Rested his hand lightly against the frame. Outside, the world moved as it always did. Cars passing. Wind brushing through trees. Distant voices blending into the background. Life continuing. He let out a soft breath. "I think I understand now," he said quietly. Max sat beside him. Still. Listening. Daniel glanced down at him. A small, grateful smile forming. "You weren't guarding the shoes," he said. "You were guiding me back." Max's ears shifted slightly. Daniel nodded once. More to himself than anything else. "I just wasn't ready to see it." Silence settled between them. Comfortable. Warm. Daniel stepped away from the window, moving slowly through the room. He picked up the letter again, held it for a moment, then placed it on the dresser. Not hidden. Not tucked away. Visible. A quiet part of the room now. He looked around once more, taking it all in. Not as something lost, but as something still connected to him. In a different way. A gentler way. Max stood, walking toward the door, then stopping, looking back again. Daniel smiled. "Yeah," he said softly. "Let's go." They stepped out together, back into the hallway. The space no longer felt divided, no longer held tension. Everything connected now. Daniel walked toward the front door again, picked up his keys. Max moved ahead of him this time, waiting near the door. Not guarding, not stopping. Ready. Daniel opened the door. Sunlight poured in. Fresh air followed. He stepped outside. Max beside him. The world felt wider, clearer. They walked down the path slowly. No rush. No destination that couldn't wait. Just movement. Together. Daniel glanced down at Max. "You knew all along," he said quietly. Max looked up briefly, then forward again. Simple. Certain. Daniel let out a small breath. A soft laugh following it. I guess I needed you to show me. They reached the end of the path. Paused for a moment. The morning stretched ahead. Open. Daniel looked forward. Then back once. Toward the house. Not with hesitation. Not with regret. With peace. Because nothing inside was unfinished anymore. Nothing left waiting in silence. Everything had found its place. He turned back. And kept walking. Max close at his side. Steady. Unwavering. Not just a companion. But something deeper. Something beyond explanation. A presence that didn't need words. Didn't need understanding. Only trust. And in that quiet, steady rhythm of footsteps and breath, Daniel realized something simple. Something lasting. Some bonds don't fade. They don't disappear. They don't break with time. They change. They guide. They stay. In ways we don't always see at first. But when we finally do, everything makes sense. And as the morning light stretched across the road ahead, Daniel walked forward without looking back. Because he didn't need to anymore. Max was with him. And somehow, that was enough.